welcome back to my channel. For those who don't know me, my name is Katharine, and in today's video, I'm doing the anti-TBR book tag. So I got this book tag from a blog on WordPress, and it's from this blog called Bookishly Rebecca. I'll tag the blog post down below that I'm getting this book tag from, and let's just get into this. So for those who don't know, like, a book tag is just basically like some prompts that fit under a category, and you have to answer those questions based on books that you think that would fit that question. So this book tag, of course, is anti-TBR. TBR stands for to be read. So basically this book tag is something that you would answer books to that you would not want to have on your TBR or to be read list. That's why it's called the anti-TBR book tag. So it's books that you would not want to read. So let's get into the first question. The first one being a popular book everyone loves that you have no interest in reading. So one book that I have no interest in reading that everyone loves is The X-Hex. So that book is specifically popular, of course, around the Halloween season and fall season. And I, as a Christian, like, don't really believe in like witchcraft and wizardry and all the sorcery, like witch type stuff. I believe it's demonic. It's not supported in the Bible. I have read Harry Potter before, but I believe there's a line that's drawn in Harry Potter where Harry Potter is not really so much about witchcraft and wizardry. Like, yes, does Harry Potter go to school for witchcraft and wizardry, Hogwarts, you know? But like, the story's not so much about the magic aspect. It's more about like the values of like good versus evil, friendship, you know, the power of love, things like that. But with the X-Hex and a lot of these like modern, more contemporary books that are coming out that are like witchy, like, it is crossing that line for me of like, you know, that dark magic. And like, you know, as the book mentions, it's called the X-Hex, and it's something that crosses that line of like, you know, putting hexes on people, and it's like more dark magic for me. And that's where I draw the line, is like the dark magic aspects of it. Like, if it crosses that line, then it becomes demonic, and I will never read a book like that. And then second question is a classic book or author you don't have any interest in reading. So it's funny because in this, you know, book tag blog post that I'm, you know, getting this off of, it has the same answer to this question, and that's The Catcher in the Rye, and that's by J.D. Salinger. I did actually read this, like, I faintly remember reading it when I was in high school, so I guess I did read it already. But like, with books that I read in middle school and high school for school, I, you know, it went in one ear out the other. Like, even though it is a good book, maybe, like, or these books that I've read are good books, like, because I had to read it for school, like, it became unenjoyable for me to read those books because, like, it was, you know, for learning purposes, and like, I personally love reading for enjoyment, so it just took the fun out of reading when I had to read it for school. But when I did read The Catcher in the Rye in school, I remember it being super dull and boring. And it's essentially about this guy who, like, you follow him, like, he's a high school student, I believe, and it's just following like one day in his life and like his thought process. And I remember it being like super dull and boring and depressing. Like, I believe he, you know, suffered from some sort of mental illness, I believe. I don't know. That's just from what I'm remembering. That might not be the case, but like, I remember it just being like really weird, and I have no interest in like rereading that or reading it. Like, for me, like, if I read it for school, I don't really count it as me having read it because like it was for school. But that's just me. Like, technically, like, I did read it in air quotations, but like, did I actually really retain any of the information that I read from it? No. So I don't plan on reading or rereading, for that matter, The Catcher in the Rye by J.D. Salinger, just because it's a classic book that, you know, gave me the impression that it was just some dull, boring, you know, mundane, sort of melancholy book. And I don't want to read a book like that, especially because reading for me is for a hobby and for enjoyment, and I don't want to read something that's depressing. So number 3, let's go on to this one. It says, a problematic author whose books you have no interest in reading. And another same answer to this question as, you know, the blog authors post in the blog that I'm getting this off of. So that would be Colleen Hoover. I actually have read quite a few of her books. I read Ugly Love, Verity, It Ends With Us, and It Starts With Us. So I read 4 of her books, but she actually has quite a few other books on her backlist that I have not read, and I don't plan on continuing reading any more of her books, just because I feel like a lot of her books are super toxic in terms of it glorifying toxic relationships. I mean, It Ends With Us, you know, it was saying that, you know, I even forget the main girl's name in it. I think her name was Lily. I think. Something like that. Or, I don't know. She owned a flower shop. But anyway, that's all I remember from it. But from what I do remember of It Ends With Us, it was like the main female character getting out of a domestic violence situation. And like, she was wanting to get out of that, but she was also struggling with wanting to stay in it too. So a lot of her books are like that, where it deals with a lot of like really, you know, tough topics. And although some of it like does, you know, have a redeeming ending in a sense, it still somewhat glorifies, you know, the, you know, toxicity of relationships. And I just don't appreciate that. And I also, even though a lot of her books do deal with like some heavier topics, like there is also like a fluffy side to her books as well. Like they sometimes seem fluffy, like I just mentioned, or shallow. Like I just don't appreciate that in books. And everyone for some reason like hypes up her books and like they like love her writing style. Like her writing style is just like okay to me. It's just like very mid. So that's like one author that I will not continue to read. And then number 4, an author you have read a couple of books from and have decided their books are not for you. I guess I could have used Colleen Hoover for that, but I'm going to use another author just for the sake of, you know, having another answer to this question. So that would be Christina Lauren. So Christina Lauren, technically, that's 2 authors. So Christina is a separate person and Lauren's a separate person, and they're friends, and they've co-author books together. And I've read The Unhoneymooners by them, and I've also read Love and Other Words by them, and I didn't like either of them. I think I gave both of them 2 stars, and I will not continue any more of Christina Lauren's books. And then number 5, a genre you have no interest in, or a genre you tried to get into and couldn't. And that's an easy answer. That would have to be thrillers. Like, I read quite a few thrillers this past year. I read The House Across the Lake by Riley Sager. I read Verity by Colleen Hoover. And what else did I read that was technically a thriller? Well, those are the 2 books that I can think of on the top of my head that are thrillers, and I didn't really like either of them. They were just like okay to me. Not that I was like, oh, I also read The Silent Patient by Alex Michaelides, that's the author's name. So those are the 3 books that I read that were considered like thrillers, but like I honestly wasn't interested in any of them. Like the premises of them, like all of them like seemed good, but like when I read them, I'm like, this is not for me. Like, not that I was scared throughout those books, like, but it was really just underwhelming, to be honest. Like, I guessed all 3 of those endings before I even like got to the end. Do you know what I mean? Like, it was just very underwhelming. Like, I guessed the endings and it was just very mid, like all 3 of them. And those are like 3 really popular thriller books that I've heard of. And I don't know if I should continue reading thrillers. Like, if there are some thriller books that you can recommend to me, please let me know. And I also don't like thrillers that are demonic. If you can recommend maybe like some suspense books, or if there are thriller books that don't have like demonic tones to it, please let me know and I'll try to give it a try one more time. But if that one more time leads to me not liking thrillers still, like, thrillers are just not for me, I guess. And then number 6, a book you have bought but will never read. This can be a book you have unhauled, returned to the library unread. And that, let me think, I just unhauled like a bunch of books. So let me try to think. Oh, I just thought of one. So this is a series technically that I'm not going to be, you know, continuing on with, and I actually unhauled these books, is A Court of Thorns and Roses. I did read A Court of Thorns and Roses, like the first book in the series, but I ended up buying the second book in the series. I think it's A Court of Mist and Fury, if I'm not mistaken, and I ended up unhauling both of those books because I heard that the series gets more spicy, and I don't really appreciate spice in books. Like, I don't mind like if it's like insinuated that they have it, like I don't mind if it's closed door. Like, I know that sometimes like mentioning like sexual content in books sometimes is helpful for the plot, but like, for example, Redeeming Love by Francine Rivers, if you've read that book you know what I'm talking about. But like, when it's just in there for, you know, just to be in there, do you know what I mean? If it's just for you to have lustful thoughts, like, I don't appreciate that. So that's why I unhauled A Court of Thorns and Roses, the series in general, just because I don't like when it's spice in books just for like lustful reasons, and that's what I heard is in that book, is because it's just for pure spice of like being lustful, and I don't appreciate that. And then the seventh question is a series you have no interest in reading, or a series you started and have DNF'd. So I could have answered it with A Court of Thorns and Roses like I did in my last question for, you know, that prompt, but I am going to answer it with another series. So I actually just recently DNF'd this series. So I read like the first 10 pages of A Cruel Prince, and that's a part of like a trilogy. And I just couldn't get over the fact that the author like would switch back and forth from first person to third person just within the first 10 pages. And then also like it's a young adult book, and the parents are like brutally murdered in the first 10 pages. Like, there's some graphic details that the author, you know, describes in the first 10 pages of the parents getting murdered. And I have read Harry Potter, and it does talk about Harry Potter's parents getting murdered, but it's not graphic. And in this young adult book, The Cruel Prince, and that series, like, it's graphically described, and I'm like, why is this in a young adult book? So I just, with the narration style of it being in first person and third person, I just got really confused, and I just didn't appreciate like the graphic detailedness of, you know, the parents being brutally murdered, especially with it being a young adult. I just didn't like that. So I DNF'd it at like 10 pages, and I unhauled that, and I got rid of it, and I was like, I'm not continuing on with that. Number 8, a new release you have no interest in reading. Any of like Emily Henry's books, like, to be honest, she's always coming out with new books, I feel like every single year. And I know she's coming out with a book in 2025, and I just have no interest in reading any of her books. I have read, I think 2 of her books. I think it's People We Meet on Vacation, and also, what was the other book that I read by her? Oh, Beach Read, and I didn't like any of those, so I don't really want to continue on with any of her other like books or any new releases that she comes out with. I'll attach an image of the new release that's coming out in 2025. I know that there's a book coming out in 2025 by her, and but I'll attach it here and you can see it for yourself, but I don't want to read that or any of her other books. Oh, okay. I guess that was the end of the book tag. I thought there were more questions, but apparently there wasn't. But thank you so much for, you know, watching this video. I really appreciate you, you know, watching till the end. If you did watch to the end, please leave the book stack emoji and do all the YouTube things that you know how to do. Like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!